Hi, my name is Cautex, and on this episode of the latest in Warrior Theorycrafting, I'm going to be looking at the current trends in the Covenant meta for Warriors. At the beginning of the expansion, the general consensus was that the best Covenants for PvE content were Venthyr if you were Arms or Fury, and Kyrian if you were Prot. But that consensus was made before we could access all of the Soulbinds, and there's also been changes made to Necrolord since then. So, has there been any noticeable change in what Covenants Warriors are choosing? Let's take a look. I've been collecting stats on Covenant choice using WoWranks.io since the beginning of February, which was midway through 9.0.2, and is also around the time that the Renown cap hit 32, which was the requirement for all Soulbinds to be available to players. The data that I will be using in this video is primarily from my first time collecting, which was on February 1st, and also my most recent collection, which was on March 23rd. Though other points in time will be discussed when it's relevant to understanding why a change occurred. Before talking about the Covenant trends in each spec specifically, I want to highlight a couple big picture findings. First, since February, there are now 86,000 more active warriors, bringing the number of warriors that have played during the last 4 weeks up to 537,000. I attribute this increase to a combination of more players getting into the expansion and also people leveling and playing their warrior alts. Some of this could be people that were main swapping, though given where warriors are in the overall class meta, I think that this would only account for a small percentage of those 86,000 new warriors. Second, there's been a roughly 5% shift in DPS warriors going from Arms to Fury. Back in February, 49% of warriors that were sampled were Arms, and 35% of them were Fury. As of March 23rd, it's now 44% playing Arms and 40% playing Fury. The primary bump for Fury occurred around the time that it was discovered that Signet of Tormented Kings was the best single-target legendary for Fury, and since then, there has been a slow creep towards more and more warriors playing Fury. I think a big reason for why this bump occurred at that time, rather than after the 8% buff that occurred shortly before this, was because now it meant that Arms warriors would not need to have a different legendary in order to try out Fury, and so there was no barrier to entry for them trying it, and they discovered that it was better, or they liked it more, and then they just stuck to playing Fury going forward. Back in February, the primary spec for Arms Warrior was Venthyr, with 58.8% of Arms Warriors using that covenant. The second most popular covenant was Kyrian, which at the time was considered the best for PvP, and they accounted for 29.2% of Arms Warriors. Necrolord and Night Fae were far less popular at the time, with 8.7% of Arms Warriors playing Night Fae and 3.4% playing Necrolord. Fast forward to the 23rd of March, and the proportion of Arms Warriors playing Venthyr has increased by 5.5%, whereas there's also been a 5.5% drop in the number of warriors playing Kyrian. I suspect that this is related to PvP, and my guess is that people were realizing that the benefit of being Kyrian in PvP wasn't as big as anticipated, and so people were switching to Venthyr, which tends to be a bit better in the generalized case. That said, I do not know a whole lot about PvP, so if you have any insight on this trend, tell me about it in the comments. There was also a minor bump to the number of warriors playing Necrolord, though I have a suspicion that this is most likely prot warriors logging off in their arm spec. Back in February, the Covenant ratios for Fury were even more Venthyr dominated than they were for Arms, with nearly 67% of Fury warriors choosing to play Venthyr. After that, 15% of warriors were playing Kyrian, 11% were playing Night Fae, and 7% were Banner Boys. Since then, there's been a lot of people, including myself, talking about Night Fae and also Necrolords. So, what's changed? As of March 23rd, the proportion of Fury warriors who are Venthyr has gone down by about 0.5%. Kyrian has seen a bigger drop, with them making up 2% less of the pie than they did back in February, and Night Fae's proportion went up by 3%. Now, 3% might not seem like much, but you need to keep in mind that this is a relation to the total number of warriors. So in reality, this 3% change is as a result of the number of Night Fae Fury warriors nearly doubling since February. If that doesn't really make sense and you're curious about how that's possible, this is the same mechanics as something called the potato paradox, and I've linked to the Wikipedia page about it in the description. While the overall proportion of Necrolord Fury Warriors is down by about 0.5%, there's actually 3,100 more Banner Boys than there were in February. This increase mostly occurred since the banner rework, though I'm personally not so sure that all of them are from Fury Warriors specifically choosing to go Necrolord, and instead I think that a decent proportion of them are Prot Warriors that are logging off in their DPS spec. Back in February, Prot Warriors were predominantly Kyrian, with 58% of all Prot Warriors selecting that covenant. 19% of Prot Warriors were Venthyr, though I suspect that many of these Venthyr Prot Warriors were simply Arms and Fury Warriors who were logging off as Prot, rather than Prot Warriors specifically choosing to go Venthyr. 15% were Night Fae, and 8% were Necrolord. Since then, Kyrian now makes up nearly 7% less of the number of Prot Warriors, and it seems like the main cause of this drop is that many of them went Necrolord, as the number of Necrolord Prot Warriors has doubled from around 6,000 to around 12,500, and as such, Necrolords now make up 14.2% of Prot Warriors. There was also an increase in the number of Prot Warriors playing with Sventhyr, and again, I think that some of this is likely attributed to DPS Warriors logging off as Prot, but I also think that there are some Prot Warriors who have gotten Cutting Edge and are swapping to Venthyr for more damage so that they can parse, and also because it is a stronger Covenant for Arms and Fury than Kyrian is. Broadly speaking, I think Warrior Covenants are in a pretty good spot since the Necrolord changes, because there's no longer any useless Covenants. While getting the Covenants perfectly balanced is certainly never going to happen, the fact that the overall difference in strength between the Covenants is not all that massive, and yet each Covenant has a clear niche and situational benefits is a great thing. And I've been pleasantly surprised that Blizzard has somehow managed to screw this up far less than I was anticipating that they would. In the comments, tell me what your thoughts are on the state of the Covenant meta, what your primary spec and Covenant are, and what your overall thoughts are on Blizzard's ability to balance Covenants so far in this expansion. Otherwise, as always, tell me why my opinions are dumb. Also, if you've got any topics you think that I should be researching for the next episode, or if you've done some more of your theory crafting yourself and would like me to highlight your findings, let me know in the comments. Lastly, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and subscribe for more.